Welcome to The Backstory, a podcast from the North Dakota News Cooperative that takes an in-depth look at the stories we're reporting for you. I'm Sabrina Halvorson, CEO of the North Dakota News Cooperative. Joining me is Michael Standaert, our lead reporter. All right, Michael, the story we're talking about today was headlined, Schools Hope to Embrace the Best of AI and Shun the Worst. And this was interesting. You and I have actually been talking about this story for a while. And the idea of AI use in schools, there's a lot of different facets to this. But, I wanted to start out with asking you, when you were reporting this story, were there any surprises for you?
I think the main surprise was how kind of exasperated and frustrated some teachers and administrators are about how fast this is moving and how they don't really have enough time to really dig in and understand it and then also address that with their students. Everyone is kind of making up rules ad hoc, whether it's, at the classroom level, at the school level, the school district level. So when I was looking at this and I went and spoke with the new state superintendent of schools, I was just trying to get a better idea of, okay, what guidance is out there? What are they trying to tell schools? Levi Bachmeyer, the new state superintendent of schools, says they have a guidance policy, but it's 2 or 3 years old now, so it's a lot of it's out of date. So they're trying to come up with some new, protocols and ideas to help schools to, better make these decisions themselves. They don't want to kind of force anything down on them. So there's just a lot of kind of, I would say frustration, just trying to figure it out, because a lot of students seem to be, this is something I heard from a lot of people. It's like students seem to be so far ahead of the teachers in using AI, Chat GPT and Google AI and all these other AI tools. And it can be hard to spot when they've been used. Some schools and classes have blocked these during school hours and during tests and things like that. And then on the other hand, there's also a lot of excitement about how it can be used, both for efficiency as far as, administrative tasks for teachers, but also as a way to increase individualized learning, kind of targets specific students, maybe gaps in their knowledge. That's kind of when I was first thinking about this story. I had heard a podcast about these AI schools, and that really sparked my interest in this. I think North Dakota is very, very far away from something like that. But speaking with educators about what's being done at these, they're called alpha schools. I think there's a few other ones. What they're doing there might not be totally applicable to North Dakota, but the tools that are developed for, I guess, focused, individualized learning, once those are honed a bit more and developed, they can be really powerful to filling gaps that might exist in a student's learning. And that AI would work with the student and figure out exactly, it'll test the student, and then it'll kind of figure out exactly what they're missing and then go back and kind of target that. So that's a very interesting aspect of all this, that there's a lot of excitement on one hand, and then a lot of kind of frustration and anxiety about, okay, how do we manage this? Particularly the student-facing part of it. On the educator side, some districts have more tools available than other ones. It seems like training is available to some people. It just depends on the school district and how they're trying to figure this out. So in some places, there's more training about use of AI tools and how to discuss this with students. In other places, it's not happening as much, and I think people want it to happen, but they just don't have the time to do it themselves. So, in a lot of cases right now, it's up to the teachers to kind of figure this out for themselves and study these different AI tools. And there's so many out there, and there's so many that are developing, very, very rapidly. So it's something that they have a struggle kind of staying on top of.
So let's look at that a little bit closer when we're talking about how AI is actually being used in classrooms right now in North Dakota. Were you able to get any examples, or can you tell us a little bit more in detail how it's actually being used?
Yeah, I didn't go into too much on that when I was discussing with them. A few mentioned different tools that they are using. A lot of it's more on the administrative side and kind of lesson planning. Some people will use Chat GPT to kind of brainstorm and get ideas for lessons. And the trouble with that is they have to also double check it afterwards because Chat GPT just kind of sources from everywhere. It sources reliable information, it sources unreliable information. So a lot of times you have to double check and kind of figure out if that information is actually reliable or not. So it does make, it kind of helps with efficiency, but in a way it makes it more inefficient as well. Because they do have to double check that. So there are other AI tools that are being developed in the educational space that are a lot more targeted, for math and English learning. I mean, one teacher I spoke with had an English learner in her school that, she really relied on like Chat GPT for helping to translate things and to help that student get up to speed on what they were doing in class. So there's a lot of positives with these tools. There's a lot of negatives. I think kind of navigating and grappling with all of that is what the struggle is right now. And my main sense is that teachers and administrators just need more time, whether it's a specific training course or whether it's a day every quarter or whatever to kind of catch up with, not only AI tools, but all the other technology advances that we're seeing right now.
So, what about misuse from students? Is that something that teachers are seeing in North Dakota?
Yes. So I think that's a problem everywhere. I mean, so Chat GPT and some of these other, Google AI, these other chat bots have become a way for students to make shortcuts on things. Some educators say that, the teacher should really know the students enough that if they see something that looks very, either beyond their level or, something that it just doesn't feel right, they should be able to recognize that. But it can be very difficult to detect. But they also don't want to, scare kids away from using these tools because they can be very helpful for, brainstorming. I mean, sometimes I'll use some of these tools to brainstorm ideas and just like see what's out there. It helps gather things. So, these things are going to be around and I think teaching appropriate use as well as kind of teaching how to use them in an appropriate way is a very good use of time. And a lot of the people I spoke with were at the high school level. I did speak with one teacher in elementary school, and there's not a lot of exposure there yet, but one of his senses is that he feels like they should be preparing some of these kids to understand some of these things before they go to middle school, because middle school is kind of when a lot of the kids, will start having their own mobile phones, smartphones, and accessing the school computers a lot more. So having those discussions earlier would probably be helpful. And particularly kind of an ethics discussion about ethical use of these tools and what is appropriate, what is not. I mean, cheating and plagiarizing has been around forever. It's just become a lot easier with tools like this. It's not just going to the library and copying things out of books anymore. It's, instantaneous. And, some of these tools can, pretty much write an essay for you. So having kids understand that, I think, is what teachers would like to relay. And they are relaying these things in class. But it's just how, should there be a broader kind of discussion and kind of policy and a more high level discussion at the state level and at some of the school district levels. I think that would be helpful for those teachers as well as just giving them time, outside of the class day to really, learn and understand these tools.
And that there are a couple of different types of AI as well. There's generative AI, which would actually write a paper for the students or, actually create content, which explains the name generative AI. But then there's also um, predictive AI, which is more kind data focused, I think. It more along, like you said, research, or it can look through a paper that you already wrote and edit it or suggest improvements or say, hey, this is wrong. And so I think it would seem like that using those two different types of AI, and those are just the two biggest types that I can think of off the top of my head, but there's a
Mm.
difference, a big difference in generative AI, which is actually doing the work for you, versus predictive AI, which is more analyzing the work that you already did or helping to set up, data and that kind of thing.
Yep.
So,
And I think some of these tools are both.
okay.
I think you can use Chat GPT in both ways. So occasionally I'll run something through to see if I've missed something as far as edits or whatever.
Hmm.
I've just recently done that. It's like, very new to me. I hadn't used Chat GPT or some of these other AIs until recently. But it's pretty fascinating how they can pick up things that you might be missing, and it's helpful to have that other, another set of
Yeah.
AI eyes, essentially. So these tools are very useful. It's just using them in an appropriate way. And it's like, okay, you can't use it to generate entire reports, or you can't use it to generate entire essays. But it can help you look at something and give you a lot of data, give you a lot of information that you can actually go through and then double check and things like that. And it might lead you in ways that you hadn't thought of before, which
Yeah.
is also very interesting, a way to use it.
Yeah. And then while you and I were discussing different aspects of the story before you wrote it as well, we talked about a few things, and you had talked about a way that AI can be used and is possibly being used in some other ways. And I want you to explain that a little bit more. You touched on it a little bit in this conversation already, but what we've talked about in the past and what you've told me in the past is that for students, say, for example, who are having a hard time with a subject, or maybe they were very sick in third grade and missed 3 weeks of math. And have a lapse in some type of knowledge, AI can help with that, whereas a teacher doesn't have time for that individual student in a class of 40.
Yep. Yeah, no, the Alpha School model, which I think started in Austin, Texas, and I think it's about in 10 or 11 different cities now. They have their own AI system that they have developed, and I think there's, several other educational AI systems like this out there where, that AI will learn the student's strengths and weaknesses, and it will start to sense where it's missing, where that student is missing information, missing mastery of something. And say like you mentioned, somebody was sick a week in third grade, and they didn't do a certain math subject, or they breezed through it really fast. They can that AI can go back and actually kind of retest the student and kind of keep drilling them, and get them up to mastery in that, and fill those gaps. And that's I think one of the most exciting things about how AI can be used in education is to address some of those things, because it's very difficult for a teacher to see, what's going on in each student's mind in a classroom of, 20, 30 students. And a lot of these schools are just kind of pushing kids through. They want kids to graduate. So, it's kind of a conveyor belt system instead of really honing in on learning. So, with these tools as they advance, I think that will help, really fill those gaps. And another aspect of it is for students who have shown a higher level in a certain subject, they can go further. Some of these AI tools and systems can help them, go even further in learning something, and they can, go further than some of their classmates might, and really hone in on, I guess, their interests and what they'd like to do in the future.
And that's a great, just my opinion here, but I think that's a great
Yeah,
use
no,
of AI.
yes.
I can
As
even
long
use
as,
it.
yeah, I mean, I think the teachers, they really want to embrace it, but they also are struggling with, people misusing it. So it's like, okay, having these conversations and talking with them, and maybe having a policy about how to talk about it would help. I think right now it's just all pretty ad hoc, and there's suggestions, and there's, guidance out there, but there's not really an overarching and kind of simplified way to discuss it.
And so when you talked with the superintendent, what did he say about the future and what are there plans in place for the future of AI in North Dakota schools?
I think, yeah, for the most part, that's all up to individual school districts right now about how they use it. I did mention, not in the story, but when I was speaking with the new state superintendent of schools, I was talking a little bit about these alpha schools and some of these other tools, and they're excited about these things as well. They didn't, think that the alpha schools would come to North Dakota, um, relatively soon, but the state does have the charter school legislation that just passed. Things like this could develop down the line, but using, similar educational software based on AI that a school like that uses, I think they're very interested in potentially using things like that for, filling those gaps as we discussed before.
All right. So, any final thoughts for our listeners on AI in the classroom or anything you learned while reporting on this story?
Um, no, I think it's also up to parents to talk to their kids about the appropriate use of it, and it's not just up to the teachers. With a lot of these things in schools, the parents also need to discuss these things with their students, with their kids. So I think, yeah, I think just having a better kind of overarching, set of discussions and would be helpful. I don't really see that happening right now. There's like this guidance and things out there, but it's all this is developing so fast. It's very difficult for them to put out guidance in a way that is meaningful in it, when it changes so fast.
And again, that story was headlined, "Schools Hope to Embrace the Best of AI and Shun the Worst." You can read that story on our website at newscoopnd.org or in one of our local newspaper partners. For the North Dakota News Cooperative, I'm Sabrina Halvorson. This has been The Backstory.